A modern city lies shattered by an earthquake, but an ancient stone temple nearby holds firm. This is the Seismic Paradox, a real-world mystery where megalithic structures outlast our finest buildings. By the end, you will understand the forgotten principles that could make our own world far more resilient. How did builders thousands of years ago create what we often cannot? And what profound wisdom did they encode in stone that we have overlooked? What does true strength actually look like? That skyscraper and that stone circle represent two entirely different conversations with the earth. One is a declaration, a statement of ambition built against the landscape. The other feels more like a question, a careful observation of the world's rhythms, answered in stone. This is not merely about old versus new, but about two opposing philosophies of strength. Modern engineering, for all its brilliance, often designs buildings to resist. The goal is to stand rigid, to defy the shaking ground with sheer mass and reinforced rigidity. Ancient builders, it seems, understood something different. They designed not to resist, but to receive. They built structures that could accept the immense energy of an earthquake, dance with it, and dissipate it harmlessly. This critical difference begins with a fundamental principle of physics called natural frequency. Think of a child on a swing. Push it at just the right moment, and the swing goes higher and higher with little effort. That perfect timing is matching the swing's natural frequency. Now imagine that swing is a 50-story building. Every structure, from a wine glass to a skyscraper, has its own natural frequency, the rate at it prefers to vibrate. During an earthquake, the ground shakes at a range of frequencies. If the shaking frequency matches the building's natural frequency, something called resonance occurs. The building doesn't just shake, it begins to oscillate wildly, each wave of energy amplifying the last, like that child on the swing being pushed at the perfect moment. This is often what causes catastrophic failure in modern towers. Their rigid, uniform design creates a clear, predictable frequency that seismic waves can lock onto and exploit. Now consider the ancient stone circle or a pyramid. Their form is radically different. They are not tall, slender, and uniform. They are often low to the ground, massive, and composed of many individual, often irregular blocks. This complexity scrambles the signal. There is no single, clear, natural frequency for the seismic waves to resonate with. The energy enters the structure and gets confused, dissipated across countless joints and surfaces, losing its destructive coherence. Material choice is the other half of this story. Modern reinforced concrete is strong, but under extreme, repetitive stress it can behave in a brittle manner. It cracks, it fails. Many ancient builders used materials with what engineers call ductility, a kind of flexible strength. Stone itself can be brittle, but the way they used it introduced flexibility. Take the Kasthamandap temple in Nepal. When a major earthquake struck in 2015, modern concrete buildings in Kathmandu collapsed into piles of rubble. But this centuries-old wooden pavilion, built with intricate interlocking joints and brick infill, swayed and shook and settled back into place. Its wooden framework could flex and absorb the energy. Its joints could slide and adjust, while the heavy mass of its structure kept it grounded. It was a system designed to move, to yield just enough without breaking. This presents a haunting question about our own path. In optimizing for efficiency, for speed, for sleek aesthetics, have we engineered a hidden fragility into our world? Our buildings are marvels of calculation, but perhaps they speak a language the earth does not understand. The ancient builders were fluent in a different tongue, one of mass, form, and harmonious dissipation. To learn it, we must look closer, down to the very first point of contact between their wisdom and the trembling earth, the foundation. The foundation of this ancient seismic wisdom is not just in the soil, but in the very first stone placed upon it. A master builder stands before a mountainside, his hands tracing the contours of a granite block that weighs more than an elephant. He does not reach for mortar or cement. Instead, he studies the stone's natural facets, its unique geometry, and with astonishing precision, he shapes it so that it will lock perfectly with its neighbor. This is dry stone masonry, the first and perhaps most profound principle of seismic resilience. It is a global language of stone, spoken from the high Andes of Peru to the islands of Japan, a technique that transforms a wall from a rigid barrier into a living, breathing entity. The secret lies not in the stones themselves, but in the spaces between them. As archaeologist Dr. J. McKim Malville observed, the joints are the secret. They are not failures but designed features. In a modern brick wall, mortar acts as a rigid glue. When the earth shakes, that wall tries to move as one solid unit, and the brittle mortar cracks, causing the entire structure to fail. A dry stone wall is an entirely different system. Each massive block is meticulously cut, often into complex polygonal or trapezoidal shapes, so it fits with its neighbors like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. They are held together by gravity and friction alone. When seismic energy courses through the ground, these stones can do something miraculous. They can shift, they can rock, they can settle. The energy is dissipated as countless tiny movements across thousands of joints, a controlled dance that prevents any single catastrophic crack from forming. This is brilliantly displayed in the Inca walls of Sacsayhuamán in Peru. These colossal fortifications, built from stones so perfectly fitted that a razor blade cannot slide between them, have withstood centuries of violent earthquakes that have leveled later colonial buildings. The walls look monolithic, but they are actually a community of individual stones. During a tremor, the entire structure can sway and settle as a cohesive, flexible unit. The stones have a self-centering property, like a stable object that wobbles but finds its balance again. The absence of rigid mortar is not a lack of technology, it is the technology. This forces a powerful question for our time. In our pursuit of perfect, seamless construction, have we built a fatal rigidity into our cities? Could the reintroduction of this ancient concept of the flexible joint, perhaps through advanced materials or design principles, revolutionize how we retrofit our own vulnerable structures? It is a compelling idea, but the genius of these ancient builders did not stop at the wall. To see the full picture, we must look down to where the stone meets the earth and discover how they conducted the energy of the quake itself. The ground beneath our feet holds a memory of every tremor that has ever passed through it. Ancient builders seem to listen to that memory, to read the topography not just for its surface beauty, but for its deep, subterranean character. This is the second principle, intelligent foundation and site selection, a practice that merges profound observation with what we might call sacred geography. It was not about finding any flat piece of land, but about finding the right piece of earth, one that possessed an innate stability. Modern geologists like Professor Ian Stewart have noted that many of the world's most enduring megalithic sites are anchored to exceptionally stable geology. The pyramids of Giza, for instance, do not simply rest on sand. They are founded upon a massive natural plateau of limestone, a dense, relatively homogeneous rock that acts as a gigantic base plate, distributing the immense weight of the structures and any seismic energy across a vast area. This stands in stark contrast to a phenomenon that devastates modern cities: liquefaction. When an earthquake strikes loose, water-saturated soil, the ground can momentarily behave like a liquid, losing all its strength. Buildings sink, tilt, or collapse as their foundations simply float away. Through generations of empirical observation, ancient builders learned to identify and avoid these treacherous zones. They sought out solid bedrock, or they engineered solutions to stabilize less ideal ground. You can see this genius in the foundational platforms of temples across the world. At Konark in India, the Temple of the Sun, though now a ruin from other causes, was built upon a colossal, intricately assembled platform designed to create a perfectly level and stable base, resisting subsidence and sliding. In other sites, builders used stepped foundations, cutting tiers into bedrock to lock the structure in place, or they incorporated natural rock outcrops as integral anchors, weaving their construction into the very bones of the landscape. Some evidence even suggests the use of layered gravel beds beneath foundations, which provided drainage to prevent water accumulation and may have acted as a primitive damping layer, absorbing vibrational energy. This raises a poignant question for our time. How much of our modern construction, driven by urban zoning maps and land value, deliberately ignores these critical subterranean truths? We build towering complexes on reclaimed marshland and soft alluvial plains, then act surprised when the earth remembers its nature. The ancient approach was a dialogue with stability, a choice to build where the earth was already strong. But choosing the right ground is only half the battle. The true test comes from the form you build upon it, the shape that must converse with the chaos of a quake. A pyramid does not fight gravity, it collaborates with it. This is the third principle, the geometry of stability, where form itself becomes a language of resilience. Ancient builders across the globe, working without shared blueprints, consistently arrived at the same profound shapes: ziggurats in Mesopotamia, massive stone platforms in Mesoamerica, the iconic pyramids of Egypt. They understood intuitively what modern physics confirms, that a low center of gravity and a wide base are nature's own answer to a shaking world. Compare two shapes in your mind. A tall, slender rectangle like a modern tower wants to topple when pushed from the side. A pyramid, with its mass concentrated low and spread wide, wants to settle back into place. This is not just about being heavy, it is about where that heaviness is placed. Structural engineer Peter James, after studying the Egyptian pyramids, noted that their shape is exceptionally effective at dealing with seismic energy. When the ground shakes laterally, the sloping sides of a pyramid convert that sideways force, what engineers call shear, into a downward compressive force. Stone is incredibly strong under compression. It loves to bear weight straight down. The pyramid's geometry essentially guides the chaotic energy of an earthquake upward and outward, dispersing it into the open air before it can concentrate and shatter the structure. This principle manifests in two complementary forms of stability. Static stability is about resisting movement, like a wide, bottom-heavy object that is hard to tip over. Dynamic stability is about managing movement, allowing a structure to sway or rock in a controlled way without collapsing. Remarkably, many ancient megaliths employ both. Take Borobudur in Indonesia, the world's largest Buddhist temple. It is a colossal stepped pyramid, a mountain of stone built on a natural hill. For over 1,000 years, it has endured the tremors and volcanic shocks of one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. Its immense weight and broad, tiered form give it profound static stability, anchoring it to the earth. Yet the very construction of its stone blocks, likely set without mortar, also permits the minute dynamic adjustments that dissipate energy. It is a shape that says both "I am rooted" and "I can move." This presents a quiet challenge to our modern architectural values. In our race for the clouds, in our celebration of the slender and the soaring, have we sidelined the fundamental, grounding wisdom of going wide? We engineer incredible solutions to keep our towers upright, but they are complex, expensive interventions fighting against the inherent instability of their form. The pyramid asks a simpler question: what if the form itself was the solution? Geometry provides the masterful shape, but the material that fills that shape, its sheer mass and presence, completes the conversation with the earth. Mass is a form of silence in the face of chaos. Imagine trying to push a stalled car versus a child's toy wagon. The car's sheer weight resists your effort. It simply will not move without tremendous force. This is inertia, the fundamental physical property that an object at rest tends to stay at rest. For the ancient builders, this was not a mere concept in a textbook. It was a tangible tool carved from the living earth. They understood that a multi-ton stone block possesses a profound quietude, a stillness that seismic energy must first overcome before it can do any harm. This monumental mass acts as a natural seismic filter. Earthquakes generate a spectrum of vibrational frequencies. High-frequency waves are short, rapid jolts that can violently shake lighter, more flexible structures like wooden houses or modern steel frames, causing them to resonate and tear apart. Low-frequency waves are longer, slower rolling motions that can topple rigid, tall buildings. A truly massive structure, however, interacts with this energy differently. Its immense inertia means it requires an enormous amount of energy just to be set into significant motion. The high-frequency jitters are often simply absorbed, dampened out by the sheer weight of the stone. The structure may experience a slow, gentle translation, a slight shift across its base, rather than the catastrophic oscillating sway that collapses a tower. It is a principle of seismic isolation through mass alone, where the building's own weight anchors it against the storm of vibrations. This is vividly illustrated by the Moai of Rapa Nui, Easter Island. These colossal stone statues, some weighing over 80 tons, have stood for centuries on an island prone to seismic activity. During significant earthquakes, modern concrete buildings and infrastructure have sustained damage, yet many of the Moai remained upright on their ceremonial platforms. Their deep burial and the careful shaping of their bases certainly contributed, but their fundamental defense was their staggering mass and low center of gravity. They were simply too heavy, too inert for the quake's energy to fully mobilize. This presents a critical reflection on our modern path. In our relentless drive for efficiency, we have championed lighter, stronger materials, glass, steel, advanced composites. We build soaring frameworks that are marvels of minimal weight, but in doing so, have we inadvertently made our buildings more excitable, more prone to resonate with the Earth's tremors? We fight the resulting instability with complex and expensive damping systems, while the ancient world used the primal solution of mass. Yet, this principle reveals a fascinating trade-off. Massive weight demands an equally formidable foundation. You cannot place a pyramid on soft soil, it will sink. The ancient mastery was in pairing colossal mass with the intelligent site selection we discussed earlier, anchoring incredible weight to the most stable geology available. So mass resists motion, but is resistance always the ultimate answer? What if the greatest wisdom lies not in refusing to move, but in knowing exactly how to move? This leads us to the most elegant and mysterious principle of all, one that transforms a building from a fortress into a dancer. A perfectly rigid structure is a brittle one. This is the fifth and perhaps most elegant principle, the art of controlled movement. Ancient builders did not see movement as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a force to be guided. They engineered their structures to be dynamic systems, to sway, to rock, to settle, transforming destructive seismic energy into harmless motion and heat. This is a sophisticated precursor to our modern base isolation systems, where buildings are placed on giant rubber or sliding bearings to let them float independently of the shaking ground. The ancient version was built directly into the stone. The secret, once again, lies in the joints. In a dry stone wall, when the earth shakes, the massive blocks do not move as one. They slide and grind against each other, a phenomenon known as frictional damping. The immense kinetic energy of the earthquake is converted into heat and sound through the stone-on-stone grinding. dissipated across thousands of contact points before it can build up to a breaking point. This is the opposite of brittle failure, where a material like unreinforced concrete cracks suddenly and catastrophically under stress. Ancient masonry fails, if it fails at all, through gradual, ductile sliding, a graceful yielding that often leaves the structure repairable. Nowhere is this principle of controlled movement more poetically expressed than in the wooden pagodas of Japan. These towering, seemingly delicate structures have stood for over 1,000 years in one of the most seismically violent regions on the planet. The Horyuji Pagoda, the world's oldest wooden building, has weathered an estimated 1,400 years of tremors. Its resilience is not in rigidity, but in a brilliant central feature called the Shinbashira. This is a massive, free-hanging central pillar that runs up through the heart of the pagoda, not fastened to the building at the top. During an earthquake, the flexible wooden frame of the pagoda sways in one direction, while the heavy Shinbashira swings like a giant pendulum in the opposite direction, acting as a counterweight and a shock absorber. The joints between the complex bracketing are also designed to slide and flex, allowing the entire structure to dance with the quake. Researchers studying these pagodas describe them as tuned mass dampers, a concept used in modern skyscrapers like the Taipei 101, where a giant suspended ball counteracts sway. The ancient builders achieved the same effect with wood and intuition. This forces a profound reflection. In our modern construction, we prize monolithic pores, seamless welds, and perfect rigidity. We seal every gap, glue every joint. But what if those gaps are not weaknesses, but sophisticated release valves? What if our obsession with perfect stillness has created a generation of buildings that must either stand perfectly rigid or break completely, with no capacity for the graceful, energy-absorbing dance that these ancient masters engineered? The wisdom was in designing for movement, but to truly grasp their genius, we must ask an even deeper question. Did they possess a form of knowledge that went beyond trial and error, a way of seeing the world's hidden forces that we have since forgotten? The stone itself holds secrets we are only beginning to decipher. While we have explored the brilliant forms and flexible joints of ancient structures, there is a deeper mystery locked within the very substance of their walls, a material science so advanced it defies our modern assumptions. Step into a laboratory where a sample of 2,000-year-old Roman concrete sits under a powerful microscope. Modern concrete, based on Portland cement, is a known compromise. It gains strength quickly but is brittle, prone to cracking as it ages, especially when exposed to water and salt. The Roman sample tells a different story. Materials scientist Professor Marie Jackson has spent years studying this ancient material, and her findings are astonishing. The Romans mixed their concrete with a specific type of volcanic ash, a reactive powder that creates a remarkably durable and flexible mineral bond. Even more incredible, when tiny cracks do form over centuries, seawater seeping in reacts with the ash to form new crystalline structures, effectively healing the fracture. This concrete does not degrade with time, it regenerates, growing stronger with each passing century. This is not a lost art, it is a forgotten science of resilience coded into the material itself. This principle of reactive, living materials extends beyond Rome. In many megalithic sites, the mortar binding the stones is not a simple lime paste. Analyses have revealed complex geopolymer cements, mixtures where natural aluminosilicate materials were chemically activated to form a stone-like bond that is both strong and capable of slight flexibility. Some theories even suggest the incorporation of organic compounds, plant extracts or proteins, that could modify the mortar's properties, creating a tougher, more monolithic bond that behaves more like the natural stone it joins. The goal was not to create a rigid glue, but a seamless transition, a unified mass that could move as one. The ultimate expression of this idea is not a built structure at all, but a subtracted one. Look to the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela in Ethiopia. These breathtaking monuments were not assembled block by block. They were sculpted downward, carved from a single, living mass of volcanic rock. There are no joints to fail, no mortar to crack. The entire church is the mountain, a unity of material and form that is inherently immune to seismic separation. The earth might shake, but the church, being part of the earth itself, simply moves with it. This raises a profound and unsettling question for our industrialized world. In our drive for standardization and speed, have we discarded a vast, decentralized encyclopedia of material science? Ancient builders worked with hyper-local materials, volcanic ash from a specific region, particular limestone deposits, unique clay beds. They developed a deep, empirical knowledge of how these substances behaved, and they engineered recipes to optimize their performance for durability and flexibility. We replaced this localized wisdom with a global, one-size-fits-all material Portland cement, prized for its predictable setting time and compressive strength, but not for its longevity or flexibility. We traded a deep, contextual conversation with the landscape for the efficiency of a universal product. The ancient approach suggests that true resilience might be found not in conquering nature with a superior synthetic material, but in collaborating with it, in understanding and harnessing the latent properties of the local earth itself. But if the material and the form were so advanced, what does that imply about the minds that conceived them? Were these techniques merely the result of millennia of trial and error, or was there a guiding framework, a deeper philosophy that informed every cut and every placement? A single generation cannot learn to speak with the earth. This final layer of understanding is not found in stone or geometry, but in time itself, in the slow, patient accumulation of wisdom passed from hand to hand and story to story. The most resilient ancient structures did not appear fully formed from a lone genius's mind. They were the product of cultural continuity, a living library of empirical knowledge built over hundreds of generations. In regions frequently visited by tremors, societies did not just build buildings, they cultivated what anthropologists call a seismic culture. This was a deep, embedded awareness of the Earth's power, preserved not in engineering manuals, but in oral histories, in myth, and in the very rituals that governed construction. As seismologist Dr. Susan Ho has noted, these stories and traditions were not mere folklore. They were a vital mechanism for transmitting life-saving knowledge across centuries, a way of saying, this is how the ground moves, and this is how we must move with it. The process was profoundly incremental. Imagine a community that builds a temple. A tremor comes and a corner cracks. The elders observe. They note how the stones shifted, which wall held firm, which joint failed. The next generation, repairing the damage, makes a slight adjustment, perhaps shaping the blocks differently or choosing a new foundation site. A century later, another quake tests that refinement. Over dozens of such cycles, spanning longer than the entire history of some modern nations, a refined, localized architectural language emerged. This was vernacular architecture in its purest form, a direct, evolved response to a specific place and its specific dangers. There was no global standard, only hyper-local solutions born of deep observation. You can see this living knowledge in the dhajji dewari buildings of Kashmir. These are traditional homes built with a timber-laced brick framework, a technique passed down through families for centuries. The wooden braces create a flexible cage that holds the masonry together during an earthquake, allowing it to sway and settle without collapsing. This is not a design from an architect's desk in a distant city. It is the crystallized memory of countless past tremors, encoded in a construction style that every local builder once knew by heart. This slow, iterative learning was possible because of the pace of life. Pre-industrial construction projects could span decades or even lifetimes. This created a natural laboratory for observation. Builders could watch how materials aged, how foundations settled, and crucially, how structures responded to the rare but inevitable seismic event. Knowledge accumulated faster than it was lost. Compare this to our modern reality. Our building cycles are compressed into months, driven by profit margins and rapid turnover. A developer may never see the long-term performance of their buildings, and the corporate entity that built them may not exist in 50 years to learn from its mistakes. We build on a tabula rasa, often clearing away not just trees and soil, but the subtle, place-specific wisdom those landscapes held. We overwrite local vernacular with international glass and steel styles, prioritizing global aesthetics over local intelligence. This raises a quiet, urgent question. In our globalized rush toward uniformity, what vital, place-based wisdom are we erasing? The ancient approach suggests that resilience is not just a technical problem to be solved once and for all with a better beam or a stronger bolt. It is a cultural practice, a long conversation between a people and their land, maintained across the ages. This accumulated wisdom likely perceived patterns far beyond the immediate tremor, seeing connections between the stability of the earth and the rhythms of the cosmos above. There is a whisper in the stones that speaks of forces we can barely perceive. Beyond the visible genius of mass and geometry, some researchers venture into a more speculative realm, proposing a sixth and deeply controversial principle, that ancient builders aligned their structures with the Earth's own hidden energy. This hypothesis suggests that site placement was not only about solid bedrock or celestial patterns, but also about telluric currents, subtle flows of electrical charge within the ground, and geomagnetic anomalies. Proponents like researcher John Burke have conducted measurements at various megalithic sites, reporting unusual spikes or patterns in electrical conductivity in the soil, particularly at sunrise or during specific lunar phases. The idea posits that these locations were chosen because they act as natural grounding points, places where the Earth's own electrical tension could be safely discharged. During periods of immense tectonic stress, as tectonic plates grind against one another, massive electrostatic charges can theoretically build up in the crust. The hypothesis suggests that building with certain stones like granite, which exhibits a piezoelectric effect, generating a small electrical charge when mechanically stressed, on these active nodes might have been a way to harmonize with, or even passively mitigate, these subterranean forces. This connects to broader, more metaphysical concepts like ley lines, the theorized alignments of ancient sites across the landscape, which some interpret as markers of this energetic web. An illustrative and tangible clue often cited is the frequent placement of megalithic structures directly upon or near geological fault lines. From a conventional perspective, this seems recklessly dangerous. But from this alternative viewpoint, it could be interpreted as intentional. If a fault line is a conduit for subterranean energy, then placing a massive, conductive stone structure upon it might act as a kind of architectural lightning rod, helping to stabilize or safely dissipate that energy over a broad area rather than letting it concentrate into a violent rupture. The empirical challenges here are immense. Mainstream archaeology and geology remain deeply skeptical, as these energies are subtle, difficult to measure consistently, and their proposed effects on seismic stability are not yet supported by robust, repeatable scientific models. It is a frontier where rigorous measurement meets intuitive tradition. This leads us to a critical, reflective crossroads. Is this line of inquiry merely pseudoscience, a modern projection of mystical thinking onto the past? Or could it be that we are dismissing an ancient, holistic understanding of Earth systems, a form of geomancy that perceived connections between rock, water, magnetism, and stability that our fragmented scientific disciplines are only beginning to rediscover? Whether the mechanism was metaphysical or fundamentally physical, the undeniable fact remains: the precision and placement of these structures continue to defy simple explanation. Their endurance asks us to expand our definition of what engineering can be, and if they were tapping into the Earth's own rhythms, it compels a final, humbling look at the source of all this ancient wisdom, not as a collection of techniques, but as a world fundamentally different from our own. The seamless fit of these ancient stones presents a paradox that defies simple tools and brute force. At sites like Puma Punku in Bolivia or within the foundations of the Great Pyramid, engineers have measured granite and andesite blocks with surfaces so flat, so perfectly aligned, that they deviate by less than 1/1000th of an inch across lengths of several feet. This is a precision associated with modern machine shops, not with copper chisels and stone hammers. Engineer and author Christopher Dunn has studied these artifacts extensively, noting tool marks that suggest the use of machinery, such as saws with diamond-like hardness or drills that left spiraling grooves indicating an immense, consistent downward pressure. The logistical puzzle deepens when you consider the transportation and placement of these multi-ton blocks, often quarried miles away. How were they moved across rugged terrain and then lifted and set with such impossible accuracy? The most famous example is the Inca wall in Cusco, Peru, where polygonal stones of all sizes and shapes interlock in a mesmerizing puzzle. The joints are so tight that, as the saying goes, not even a razor blade can be inserted between them. This isn't just aesthetic mastery, it is functional engineering genius. From a seismic perspective, this perfect contact is a form of super strength. When two surfaces mate with such precision, the area of contact is maximized. This dramatically increases the frictional force holding the stones together, making it far harder for them to slide apart under stress. More importantly, it creates near-perfect load distribution. The weight of the entire structure is transferred evenly across every single point of contact, eliminating stress concentrations that could cause a stone to crack or pop out of place during an earthquake. The wall behaves less like a collection of individual blocks and more like a single, monolithic yet flexible mass. This leads to the most enigmatic question of all: how was this precision achieved? Alongside theories of advanced, lost tooling, there exists a persistent fringe idea drawn from various cultural traditions: the concept of acoustic or sonic levitation. Some legends speak of priests or sages using chants, specific frequencies, or sacred instruments to make stones lose their weight, allowing them to be floated into place. While mainstream science finds no evidence for this, the theory asks us to consider sound not as a tool for communication, but as a potential technology, a means of manipulating matter through vibrational resonance. Could the builders have discovered a way to use sound to soften stone, to reduce friction, or to guide blocks with impossible precision? Whether you see this as metaphorical or a literal lost science, it underscores the central mystery. Does this staggering precision point to a forgotten high civilization with technologies we no longer understand? Or does it represent the absolute apex of artisan skill, a patient, generations-long pursuit of perfection that we, in our age of power tools, have simply forgotten how to achieve? The precision ensures the fit, but the true resilience lies in how that perfect fit is integrated into a larger, forgiving system. A spider's web can lose several strands and still hold its shape, its strength distributed across countless interwoven threads. This is the seventh principle: redundancy and load distribution, a concept so fundamental to modern engineering that it feels startling to find it woven into the very fabric of ancient stone. These builders designed structures that were, in engineering terms, indeterminate. This means the load, the immense weight of the stones themselves, is not carried by one single, predictable path. It is shared across a network of supports, a stone web where if one element weakens or shifts, the force instantly finds a new route through the structure. There is no single point of failure. You can see this genius in the simple yet profound trilithon, the iconic three-stone arch of Stonehenge. The massive horizontal lintel does not merely rest on top of two uprights. It is locked to them with carved mortise and tenon joints, stone knobs fitting into stone sockets. This transforms three separate stones into a single, integrated unit. The weight is not just borne downward by the uprights, it is also transferred laterally through that locking joint, creating a stable triangle of force. It is a built-in backup system, ensuring that even if the ground beneath one upright settles, the lintel remains secured and the load is redistributed. This thinking scales up to entire architectural systems. Look at the Mycenaean Lion Gate in Greece, the entrance to a fortress built over 3,000 years ago. Above the massive doorway sits an enormous lintel stone, estimated to weigh over 20 tons. Directly above that lintel, the builders left a triangular opening, which they filled with a sculpted relief. This is not merely decorative, it is a brilliant relieving triangle. Its purpose is to channel the immense weight of the wall above away from the vulnerable center of the lintel, directing it down along the solid masonry on either side of the gateway. The triangle creates a stable arch in stone, redistributing compressive forces along strong, diagonal paths and preventing the lintel from snapping under the pressure. A restoration architect working on medieval castles once observed that these ancient builders built in backups we are only now modeling with computers. They understood load paths intuitively, crafting corbelled arches where each stone steps inward, supporting the next and creating a channel for forces to travel safely down to the earth. They keyed stones together in 3 dimensions, with protrusions and recesses that interlocked on unseen faces, creating a structural unity that went far beyond the visible surface. This stands in stark contrast to many modern determinate structures, where loads follow a single, calculated path. We design for efficiency, using the minimum material required to meet a specific strength standard. This is elegant in theory, but it leaves little room for error. If that one calculated path is compromised by a hidden flaw in the material or an unexpected stress, the failure is often sudden and total. The ancient approach, with its generous redundancy, allows for progressive failure. A stone might crack, a joint might open slightly, but the web holds. The structure groans, settles, and finds a new equilibrium. It gives a warning, and it often remains standing, repairable. This forces a difficult reflection on our own values. In our pursuit of lean, optimized design, driven by cost and material savings, have we engineered out the inherent safety net? Have we replaced the resilient stone web with a series of delicate, critical chains, where the failure of one link means collapse? The physical redundancy of the structure finds a profound echo in its very reason for being, suggesting these monuments served as more than just shelters from the storm. A structure built for a god is engineered to a different standard than one built for a market. This is the profound chasm of purpose that separates the ancient temple from the modern tower. The driving force behind most enduring megaliths was not economic return on investment, but a sacred imperative to create a permanent axis mundi, a center of the world where heaven and earth met. As historian Mircea Eliade described, these were not ordinary places, they were hierophanies, locations where the sacred revealed itself. Such a space demanded ultimate stability, an eternal foothold for the divine in the mortal realm. This spiritual purpose dictated every single decision, from quarry to capstone. Only the finest materials from the most auspicious sources were considered worthy. Labor was not a cost to be minimized, but a sacred duty, often performed by skilled artisans and community members as an act of devotion or civic obligation. Time itself was viewed through a different lens. A project spanning 50 years was not a failure of efficiency. It was a testament to its importance, a multi-generational covenant between a people and their cosmos. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. Current research suggests its construction likely spanned 2 to 3 decades under the reign of Khufu. This was not a frantic rush job. It was a sustained national project with meticulous logistical oversight, a permanent home for the king's spirit aligned with the imperishable stars. The limestone casing stones were so perfectly cut and polished they reflected the sun like a beacon on the desert plateau. This was architecture as an act of faith, built to outlast time itself. Now contrast this with the modern speculative high-rise. Its primary purpose is financial, designed to maximize leasable square footage and completed within a tight 2-year window to satisfy investors. Material choices are balanced between cost and code minimums. Labor is a contracted expense. The building's lifespan is often calculated in decades, with an expectation of major renovation or demolition within a human lifetime. This is not a judgment but a stark observation of differing values. One approach builds for eternity, the other for a depreciation schedule. This raises a haunting, perhaps uncomfortable question for our age. Can a society driven overwhelmingly by short-term economic incentives, by quarterly reports and political cycles, ever muster the collective will to build something meant to endure for 1,000 years? The ancient builders' answer was etched in stone. Their enduring purpose forced them into a deep, intimate dialogue with their local environment. They could not simply import a generic solution. They had to listen to the land, understand its stones, its faults, its hidden waters, because the sacredness of the site demanded it. This profound connection to place was the final ingredient in their recipe for resilience. A building quarried from its own hill speaks the same language as the earth. This eighth principle is one of profound symbiosis, where ancient structures were not placed upon the landscape, but emerged from it, creating a seamless partnership with local materials and climate that inadvertently forged immense seismic resilience. Vernacular architecture specialists note that this was not a romantic ideal, but a practical necessity that yielded extraordinary durability. Builders used stone quarried from the same geological formation, often from the very site of construction. This meant the blocks in the wall and the bedrock of the foundation shared an identical mineral composition, density, and thermal personality. They had weathered together for millennia under the same sun, rain, and frost cycles. When the temperature changed, expanding and contracting with the seasons, or when seismic vibrations passed through, the entire structure responded as a unified mass. There were no hidden internal stresses caused by one type of stone pushing against another with different properties. It was a conversation between like and like, preventing the microfractures that can silently weaken a structure over decades. This deep material kinship extended to the binders they used. Many ancient cultures employed lime-based mortars, mixed from locally burnt limestone or seashells. Unlike modern Portland cement, which forms a rigid, brittle bond, lime mortar is softer and more flexible. It has a degree of breathability, allowing moisture trapped within the wall to evaporate outwards. This is critical because trapped water freezing and thawing is a primary cause of deterioration in masonry. More importantly for earthquakes, that slight flexibility allows the mortar to absorb tiny movements without cracking catastrophically. The wall could breathe and flex as a living system. This local intelligence also guided water management. From the sophisticated drainage channels in Inca terraces to the sloped foundations of Mediterranean temples, designs actively shed water away from the base. This prevented the undermining of foundations and stopped water from pooling and weakening the soil, a major factor in seismic liquefaction. Perhaps the ultimate expression of this symbiosis is found in the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde. Here, the ancestral Pueblones did not build a free-standing structure at all. They constructed their homes within deep sandstone alcoves, using the living rock as the roof, the back wall, and the foundation. The overhanging cliff shielded them from the punishing elements, from torrential rain to scorching sun, drastically reducing weathering. But seismically, the benefit was even more profound. Their dwellings were literally part of the mountain. During ground motion, the entire alcove would move as one entity. There was no separate building to shake apart from its foundation because the building was the foundation. It was architecture as an extension of geology. This forces a sobering reflection on our modern, globalized approach. Today, a skyscraper in Dubai might use steel from Korea, concrete aggregate from India, and glass from Germany. These materials are engineered to high standards, but they are strangers to each other and to the local environment. They have different rates of thermal expansion, different responses to local humidity and mineral content in the groundwater. Over years, these hidden incompatibilities can create points of weakness, silent stresses that a major tremor could exploit. We have gained global efficiency but lost a deep, localized harmony. The ancient way suggests that true resilience is rooted in place, in a dialogue with a specific hill, a specific quarry, a specific climate. This partnership with the immediate world fostered a perspective that measured success not in years, but in generations, in the slow, patient accumulation of wisdom that only deep time can teach. Time was the invisible architect, a silent partner in the construction of these enduring monuments. While we marvel at the final form, we often overlook the profound structural advantage granted by the sheer slowness of their creation. Imagine a foundation stone laid and then nothing. For a year or 5 or 10, that stone simply sat, bearing only its own weight, slowly compacting the soil beneath it as seasons of rain and drought passed overhead. Then a second layer was added. Again, the builders waited, observing how the first course settled under this new load, watching for any hint of unevenness or weakness. This was not inefficient delay, it was a critical phase of construction, a form of natural pre-stressing. By allowing each massive element to fully consolidate under gravity before adding the next, ancient builders eliminated the hidden killer of modern construction, differential settlement. In a quickly built modern high-rise, the entire colossal weight is applied to the ground within months. On compressible soils, this can cause the building to sink unevenly, a slight tilt here, a hidden crack there, which becomes a catastrophic weakness when seismic waves amplify that initial flaw. The ancient method ensured the structure, and its foundation became a single, fully settled unit long before it reached its full height, having already completed its major settlement centuries ago. Archaeologists studying sites like the massive earthen platforms at Teotihuacan in Mexico or the foundational terraces of Angkor Wat in Cambodia frequently find evidence of repairs and modifications made during the original construction phases. This indicates a process of real-time learning and adjustment. If a section showed signs of stress as weight was added, the builders could reinforce it, change the design, or improve the foundation before proceeding. The structure itself was telling them where its weaknesses were, and they had the generational timeline to listen and respond. This principle extends to the materials themselves through a property known as creep, the imperceptibly slow, permanent deformation of a material under constant stress. A modern concrete skyscraper is still undergoing its creep phase, its materials slowly adjusting to the immense loads they carry, a process that can last for decades and subtly change how forces are distributed within the frame. An ancient pyramid or stone temple completed its primary creep phase 1,000 years ago. Its stones have long since found their final, stable positions, having settled into a perfect, stress-relieved equilibrium with each other and the earth below. The great European cathedrals, built over centuries, are a more recent testament to this virtue of patience. Their soaring naves were raised incrementally, allowing flying buttresses to be adjusted and foundations to be strengthened as understanding evolved. The result was a structure that grew organically strong, its resilience baked into the very timeline of its birth. This forces a confronting question for our era of rapid development. In a global economy that demands instant occupancy and return on investment, where construction schedules are measured in months, not lifetimes, can we ever hope to replicate the profound, time-forged stability of these ancient wonders? Our engineered accelerants and forced curing times attempt to cheat this process, but perhaps some forms of strength cannot be rushed. This patient, observational approach to building was ultimately a form of deep listening, a dialogue with the land that prepared these structures for the specific, recurring threats their locations would face. The earth keeps a calendar of its own violence, written not in ink but in layers of rubble and repair. This introduces a ninth, deeply powerful principle: design based on recurrence intervals, where architecture evolves through a form of seismic memory. In regions where the ground remembers to shake every few generations, communities could not afford to forget. They lived with the knowledge that the great tremor would return, and this awareness was woven directly into their cultural DNA and their building practices. Paleoseismologists, scientists who study the geological traces of ancient earthquakes, find this story etched into the landscape. While these ancient cultures had no concept of tectonic plates, they possessed a profound empirical understanding of a recurring pattern, the earth shaking, and they meticulously observed what stood and what fell. This created a slow, powerful process of architectural natural selection. A design that collapsed was a lesson written in stone and loss. A design that held became a prototype, a template to be copied, refined, and passed down. The successful form was not just a building, it was a survival strategy encoded in tradition. We can read this evolutionary process in the stratified cities of antiquity. At sites like ancient Troy or Jericho, archaeologists peel back layers of history like the pages of a book. They find distinct strata, layers of ash, collapsed walls, and debris, each marking a catastrophic event. And crucially, in the layer built immediately on top, they often see a change. The new city walls are thicker, set on broader foundations. The house layouts are simpler, sturdier. The architecture has visibly adapted, incorporating the hard-won lessons from the rubble below. It was a slow, iterative refinement driven by the long interval between catastrophic tests. Perhaps the most stunning example of this principle in action is not a ruin, but a building that still stands, Istanbul's Hagia Sophia. Constructed in the 6th century, it has occupied one of the most seismically active corners of the planet for nearly 1,500 years. It has not survived through sheer luck or immutable perfection. It has survived because it has been a living entity, constantly learning. It has been damaged, sometimes severely, by dozens of major earthquakes over the centuries. And each time when the Great Dome cracked or the arches shifted, the engineers of the day did not simply patch it. They studied the failure. They added massive external buttresses to counteract specific weaknesses. They reinforced supports and rebuilt sections with an evolving understanding of how the immense structure wanted to move. The Hagia Sophia we see today is a palimpsest of seismic resilience, a cumulative design shaped by the direct feedback of quakes across 15 centuries. This forces a quiet reflection on our modern engineering paradigm. We place immense faith in computer models that simulate forces based on idealized mathematics and estimated soil data. These models are brilliant, but they are theoretical. They have not been tested by the unpredictable, chaotic reality of 1,000 real-world tremors. The ancient approach used a different and arguably more rigorous testing laboratory, time itself. Their models were physical prototypes that either survived the actual earthquake or they did not. The invaluable data was not generated in a server farm, but written in the cracks of ruins and the stability of what remained. This long-term feedback loop consistently favored one overarching quality, a quality modern engineering, in its quest for perfect rigidity, often overlooked but is now urgently relearning the fundamental virtue of flexibility. A wooden skeleton gives stone the ability to dance. This is the brilliant hybrid logic of composite construction, where ancient builders fused the crushing mass of masonry with the resilient flexibility of timber. Across a vast seismic belt stretching from the Himalayas through Anatolia and into the Mediterranean, a common architectural language emerged, one of wooden cages encasing stone or brick infill. In Turkey, this technique is called himis, and in Kashmir, dhajji dewari, but the principle is universal. It is the engineering wisdom of the basket, a flexible framework that holds its contents securely even when jostled. Restoration architects working on historic Ottoman houses in Istanbul have noted that during major earthquakes, these traditional himis structures consistently outperformed modern adjacent buildings. The reason lies in the beautiful synergy of materials. The heavy stone or brick walls provide thermal mass and compressive strength, bearing the vertical loads with ease. But woven horizontally through these walls at regular intervals are robust wooden beams. These timbers create a continuous lattice, a three-dimensional net that holds the entire masonry infill together. When the ground shakes, the rigid masonry wants to crack and shatter, but the wooden cage prevents that. The timber flexes, it bends, it absorbs the kinetic energy like a spring. The walls sway as a cohesive unit, the wooden members groaning and straining but holding fast, preventing any single section from breaking free and triggering a catastrophic, brittle collapse. This is ductility in its purest form, the ability to deform without failing. It is fundamentally different from modern reinforced concrete. In our contemporary material, steel rebar is embedded within concrete to provide tensile strength. But this bond is everything, and it is vulnerable. If the concrete cracks extensively, the steel can corrode, losing its strength, or the bond between the two materials can fail. In the traditional wooden cage, the materials are not fused, they are partnered. They can move independently to a degree, accommodating movement without losing their individual integrity. The wooden brackets of East Asian pagodas represent the pinnacle of this composite artistry. These elaborate, interlocking wooden frameworks, often called dugong in China, support massive tiled roofs. Each bracket is a complex joint of beams and blocks, fitted together without nails, acting as a shock-absorbing spring between the heavy roof and the supporting column. During an earthquake, these brackets compress and flex, their intricate joinery allowing for controlled movement that dissipates energy like a sophisticated mechanical damper. The wood yields just enough to take the shock, while the overall geometry of the structure guides the forces safely downward. This ancient composite wisdom now echoes in a surprising modern trend, the rise of mass timber construction. Today, engineers are creating tall buildings from cross-laminated timber, a super-strong, engineered wood product. The motivations are often environmental, but the seismic benefits are a powerful parallel. Like the himis house, a well-designed timber building is inherently ductile, capable of flexing and dissipating energy through the connections between its wooden elements. It poses a fascinating question: are our most advanced sustainable building techniques leading us, in a way, back to one of humanity's oldest and most resilient structural insights? Yet, composite systems were not the only path to stability, for some builders chose a different kind of answer, one defined by overwhelming, monumental scale. A small-scale model shatters under simulated seismic forces, but its full-sized counterpart might only sway. This reveals a 10th principle, the scale effect, where size itself becomes a structural advantage. In the world of physics, the behavior of materials and structures does not simply scale up or down in a linear way. Certain properties change dramatically with mass, creating unique conditions that ancient builders of megaliths may have intuitively harnessed. Consider the fundamental relationship between surface area and volume. As an object grows larger, its volume, and thus its mass, increases much faster than its surface area. A block of stone twice as tall, wide, and deep is not twice as heavy, it is 8 times as heavy. This immense mass grants it a correspondingly immense inertia, that resistance to being set into motion we discussed earlier. But the scale effect goes deeper. High-frequency vibrations, the rapid, jittery shaking that can crack mortar and snap brittle connections, are particularly dampened in a massive object. The energy required to make a 50-ton monolith vibrate at that frantic pitch is often more than an earthquake can deliver at that specific frequency. The giant stone simply filters out the jitters, responding instead to the lower frequency, rolling waves with a slow, ponderous movement that is less destructive. Furthermore, the way stress and cracks behave changes with scale. In a small brick, a tiny internal flaw or crack can quickly propagate across the entire unit, causing it to fail. In a colossal stone block weighing hundreds of tons, that same sized flaw is proportionally insignificant. The crack would have to travel an enormous distance through dense crystalline structure to split the stone, and the immense surrounding mass often inhibits its progress. Engineers who study massive structures like dams or the natural behavior of mountains observe this principle in action. These colossal forms have resonant frequencies so low that they rarely match the dominant frequencies of most seismic events. They are, in a sense, tuned to be still. The surviving Moai of Easter Island, those that remained upright on their platforms, exemplify this. Their staggering mass, combined with a shape that channels weight downward, made them exceptionally resistant to being rocked off their bases by the high-frequency components of a tremor. Similarly, the Colossi of Memnon in Egypt, massive seated statues weighing over 700 tons each, have endured for millennia despite the region's seismic history. Their survival speaks to the power of monolithic scale. This forces a reflection on our modern trajectory. Our engineering marvels are often triumphs of miniaturization and lightweight efficiency. We build with slender steel members, thin curtain walls, and intricate components. Each piece is optimized for strength-to-weight ratio, but in doing so, have we created assemblies that are inherently more excitable, more vulnerable to the very vibrational energies that massive stone simply absorbs and ignores. We compensate with complex dampers and base isolators, essentially adding corrective technology to a design that, at its core, lacks the innate stability of scale. Yet, raw size alone is not a panacea. A giant block placed on unstable ground will sink or topple. The ancient genius was in pairing this monolithic mass with the other principles, the perfect foundation, the flexible joints, the symbiotic relationship with the local earth. The scale was the final, overwhelming argument in a conversation with physics, a declaration of permanence written in the language of pure mass. The true strength of a temple begins in the earth, long before the first stone is set upon the altar. To understand the seismic wisdom of the ancients, we must descend below the visible monument into a hidden world of deliberate engineering. For these master builders, resilience was not an afterthought applied to the facade. It was a foundational covenant, dug deep into the very ground they sought to honor. Excavations at sites across the globe reveal a staggering truth, that a disproportionate amount of their effort, resources, and genius was invested in what we never see, the subterranean network of stability. At Angkor Wat in Cambodia, archaeologists have uncovered something astonishing beneath the iconic towers. The entire temple complex, a symbol of the cosmic mountain, rests upon a meticulously constructed foundation box. This is not simple packed earth. It is a vast, layered mattress of sand and gravel, contained within robust retaining walls. This engineered substrate acts as a giant cushion, a shock-absorbing layer that can compress and shift slightly during ground movement, preventing the shockwaves from traveling directly into the delicate stonework above. It is a primitive but profoundly effective form of base isolation, conceived centuries before the term entered an engineer's lexicon. This careful attention to the interface between building and earth speaks to a sophisticated understanding of a hidden danger, liquefaction. As we touched on earlier, when loose, water-saturated soil is shaken violently, it can momentarily lose all strength and behave like a liquid. A structure built upon such ground can sink, tilt, or collapse as its foundation literally floats away. The ancient solution was twofold. First, to avoid these risky substrates through generations of observational knowledge, and second, to actively manage water with an almost obsessive focus. They understood that controlling moisture was controlling stability. This is spectacularly demonstrated at the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley. Here, thousands of years ago, engineers constructed an elaborate, city-wide grid of covered drains and channels. This system did more than handle sewage. It was a critical piece of civic infrastructure designed to keep the water table low and the building substrates consistently dry. By preventing water from accumulating under structures, they safeguarded the city against the destabilizing effects of saturation, a principle that directly combats seismic liquefaction. The logic is elegant and timeless. Dry earth is stable earth, but foundations went beyond drainage and cushioning. At many sites, builders sought a direct, unshakable connection to the planet's bones. They cut foundations directly down to bedrock, anchoring their walls to the most stable stratum available. In other cases, they drove deep timber or stone pilings through soft topsoil until they hit a firm layer, creating a stable platform upon which to build. This practice of seeking bedrock is a global constant. From the rock-cut foundations of Mediterranean temples to the way massive stones in Peru were often shaped to fit the contours of the living rock beneath them, creating a perfect interlocking bond. This leads us into one of the most captivating mysteries of all, the purpose of the hidden chambers and tunnels found beneath so many megalithic sites. Beneath the Great Pyramid, deep shafts and an unfinished subterranean chamber cut into the bedrock have long puzzled researchers. While their ceremonial or symbolic purposes are debated from an engineering perspective, they raise intriguing questions. Could such excavations have served a geotechnical function? By creating void spaces or channels within the bedrock itself, might the builders have been attempting to relieve subterranean pressure or to create pathways for groundwater to flow, further stabilizing the immense mass above? Some researchers in the field of archaeoacoustics even speculate about the role of such chambers in manipulating sound or earth energies, a form of geomancy where the structure was tuned to the site's hidden frequencies. Whether the purpose was practical, spiritual, or both, the pattern is clear. The ancients did not see the ground as a blank slate. They saw it as a dynamic partner, full of currents, pressures, and voices that needed to be acknowledged, managed, and sometimes harmonized with. This forces a quiet, urgent reflection on our modern world. In an era of rapid development, how often is foundation work rushed, subcontracted, and hidden from view, considered a cost to be minimized rather than the most critical investment in a building's life? We adorn what stands above while often neglecting what lies beneath. Yet the ancient principle is inescapable. What supports the visible monument is always, inevitably, invisible. And sometimes that which is anchored most deeply in the earth is the very thing designed to connect us to the heavens. The stones that point to the stars also stand upon the most solid ground. This is not a coincidence but a clue to a deeper layer of ancient intention. Across the world, from the standing stones of Kalanish to the sun dagger of Choco Canyon, we find a persistent pairing, precise astronomical alignments built upon remarkably stable geology. This raises a fascinating and complex question. Were these sites chosen first for their sacred connection to the heavens, with seismic resilience being a happy accident? Or did the builders possess a holistic wisdom that saw celestial order and terrestrial stability as two sides of the same coin? Archaeoastronomers like Professor Clive Ruggles, who study how ancient cultures understood the sky, offer a compelling perspective. The primary motivation for these precise alignments was almost certainly ritual and cosmological. Tracking the solstices, the equinoxes, and the cycles of bright stars like Sirius was about marking time, predicting seasons, and connecting human activity to the grand, predictable rhythms of the cosmos. It was a way of bringing cosmic order down to Earth, but to do that effectively, you needed an ideal vantage point. You needed high ground, clear of obstructions, with an uninterrupted view of the horizon. Such locations, by their very nature, tend to be geologically stable ridges, hilltops, or plateaus composed of solid bedrock. They are naturally elevated above floodplains with their unstable, waterlogged soils and away from steep, erosion-prone slopes. So while the builders sought a window to the stars, they were also, inadvertently, selecting the most seismically sound real estate available. The celestial alignment dictated the need for a stable platform, and the stable platform, in turn, granted the structure its enduring strength. We must carefully distinguish between correlation and causation here. The fact that two things are found together does not mean one directly caused the other. It is a correlation. The causation likely runs from the spiritual need for an observatory to the practical requirement of stable ground, which then bestowed seismic benefits. However, there is another, more speculative thread in this tapestry. Some researchers point to what is called the oriented fracture theory. This suggests that in certain landscapes, natural geological features, like fissures in the bedrock or alignments of ridges created by tectonic forces, might themselves have been seen as sacred, as lines of power in the earth. If a prominent star or the rising sun happened to set along that same natural line, it would create a powerful convergence, a sign that this was a place where the fabric of the world aligned. In this view, the builders were not just looking up, but also reading the language of the landscape itself, choosing sites where earthly and celestial geometries resonated. A powerful illustration of this potential dual purpose is Newgrange in Ireland. This massive, 5,000-year-old passage tomb is built upon a high, stable ridge of glacial gravel, a naturally well-drained and firm foundation. Its most famous feature is a precisely engineered roof box, a narrow opening above the entrance. At dawn on the winter solstice, for just a few precious minutes, a beam of sunlight travels up the long, dark passageway to illuminate the central chamber deep within the mound. This was a breathtaking astronomical achievement, a way of capturing the rebirth of the sun on the year's darkest day. But note where this happens, not in a valley, but on that secure, elevated ridge. The ritual demanded a permanent, immovable marker to capture that specific solar event, and such permanence could only be guaranteed by building on eternally stable ground. The cosmic function and the seismic resilience were woven together in a single, brilliant design. This invites a profound reflection on our modern compartmentalized thinking. Today, an astronomer selects a mountaintop for a telescope based on atmospheric clarity. A geologist surveys the same mountain for rock stability. An engineer then designs a foundation. These are separate specialists, often working in isolation. The ancient approach, as seen at Newgrange and countless other sites, suggests a worldview that did not separate the cosmic from the terrestrial, the spiritual from the practical. Their wisdom integrated these realms seamlessly. By seeking harmony with the cycles of the heavens, they were inevitably guided to places of harmony within the earth, to locations that could withstand the very cycles of destruction their celestial observations may have helped them anticipate. Did they understand that the patience required to track the slow precession of the stars was the same patience needed to listen to the deep, quiet stability of the land? In their quest to build a clockwork of stone aligned with the cosmos, they may have discovered the deepest secret of all, that true alignment is not just with what is above, but with what lies below. A fallen giant holds more truth than one still standing. To understand the full genius of ancient seismic design, we must also examine where that design reached its breaking point, where the stones finally stopped dancing and fell. These ruins are not merely monuments to disaster, they are detailed engineering reports etched in broken granite and tilted foundations, offering a masterclass in the limits of resilience. Archaeologists and structural conservators approach these sites as forensic scientists. As one conservator working on Roman ruins noted, a collapse pattern is a story waiting to be read. The way a wall has fallen outward points to a failure in lateral support. A column that has shattered mid-shaft rather than at the base suggests a fatal flaw in the stone itself or a sudden, violent shock. By studying these failures, we can reverse engineer the precise stresses that prove too much, revealing the boundary conditions that their successful counterparts somehow managed to avoid. Several common failure modes emerge from this global analysis. One of the most frequent is differential foundation settlement. Even the most massive structure is vulnerable if placed upon ground that is not uniformly firm. The ancient obelisk at Axum in Ethiopia, once a towering symbol of a kingdom, now lies broken on the ground. Studies suggest its collapse centuries ago was likely due to one side of its foundation settling into softer earth over time, creating a fatal tilt that gravity eventually exploited. This highlights a critical principle: the most brilliant superstructure is only as good as the ground beneath it. Another classic failure involves lateral thrust, the outward push generated by arches and vaults. The glorious temple of Zeus at Olympia, home to one of the seven wonders, the colossal statue of Zeus, eventually fell to ruin. While the statue itself was lost to history, the temple's collapse was partly due to the immense roof it once supported. The design likely generated tremendous outward thrust on the columns, and without adequate external buttressing to counteract that force, the entire structure became vulnerable to the cumulative effect of tremors over centuries. The stones, in trying to spread apart, created an inherent instability that seismic energy could amplify. A third pervasive threat is the silent, patient work of erosion. Water, both above and below ground, is a relentless sculptor. It can undermine foundations by washing away supporting soil, a process called scouring. It can seep into joints, freeze, expand, and slowly pry stones apart. This hydrological attack weakens a structure from within, creating points of vulnerability that a quake can then target with devastating efficiency. Perhaps the most instructive case of all is the legendary Lighthouse of Alexandria. For over 1,500 years, this marvel guided ships into the great harbor. Its end was not swift, but a slow surrender to multiple assaults. Historians and geologists now believe a series of powerful earthquakes over centuries caused cumulative damage. But the final blow may have been delivered by the very ground it stood upon. The lighthouse was built on the island of Pharos, and evidence suggests the foundation was eventually compromised by soil liquefaction, where saturated ground lost its strength during a major tremor. The combination of seismic shaking and a foundation turning to liquid beneath it proved insurmountable, even for this pinnacle of ancient engineering. This forensic view forces a powerful and humbling question. If these are the reports of ancient failures, what do they teach us about the successes? They tell us that the enduring structures were not invincible but perfectly adapted. They succeeded where others failed by marrying overwhelming mass to impeccably chosen ground, by countering lateral thrust with brilliant geometry or external supports, and by managing water with obsessive care. Each fallen colossus defines, by contrast, the precise recipe that kept its neighbors standing. In learning why some stones fell, we gain a far deeper appreciation for why others remain, and we find a surprisingly practical guide for our own world, where the line between resilience and ruin is often drawn by the lessons we choose to learn from the past. The giant golden sphere suspended inside Taipei 101 is not a decorative art piece, it is a 700-ton confession. This massive pendulum, swaying silently near the top of one of the world's tallest skyscrapers, is a tuned mass damper, a technological marvel that admits a profound truth. Our most advanced seismic engineering is not inventing new principles, but painstakingly rediscovering and mechanizing the intuitive wisdom of the ancient world. We are building with immense complexity and cost what nature and intuition once provided for free. This is the great convergence where the past and present meet in a shared understanding of a fundamental law. To survive an earthquake, a structure must know how to move. The most direct echo of this ancient logic is found not at the top of a tower, but beneath it in a technology called base isolation. Imagine placing an entire building on a layer of giant, flexible bearings or slick sliders. During a quake, the ground lurches violently, but the structure above this interface is allowed to float, to shift independently. The destructive energy is not transmitted upward. It is absorbed and dissipated in that engineered gap. This is not a new idea. It is the high-tech descendant of the slippery stone-on-stone interfaces in an Inca wall, or the layered gravel beds beneath Angkor Wat. As seismic engineer Billy Robinson has noted, the conceptual leap from a carefully placed gravel cushion to a synthetic rubber bearing is one of materials, not of fundamental physics. Both systems aim to decouple, to create a controlled slippage that protects the whole. The same principle of managing movement extends upward into the building's very skeleton with viscous fluid dampers. These are massive pistons filled with a thick, gooey fluid installed within a building's frame. As the structure sways, the piston forces the fluid through small openings, converting the kinetic energy of the movement into heat, effectively bleeding off the destructive force. Listen to the description of this process, the conversion of movement into harmless heat through friction, and you hear the exact same story told by the grinding of stone blocks in a dry masonry wall during a tremor. The ancient version used the granite itself. The modern version uses specialized oil, but the goal of frictional damping is identical. Then we return to that golden sphere in Taipei, the tuned mass damper. Its function is a brilliant echo of inertial stability. When the skyscraper begins to sway from seismic winds or an earthquake, the colossal ball, suspended by cables, swings in the opposite direction. Its immense inertia acts as a counterweight, pulling against the building's motion and canceling out the sway. This is the precise mechanical principle behind the heavy central pillar, the Shinbashira, in a Japanese pagoda, or even the stabilizing mass of a pyramid's wide base. The ancient builders used the passive, inherent weight of stone. We engineer an active, swinging weight of steel and concrete, but both harness mass to counteract motion. This convergence forces a reflective, almost poetic question. Are we, in our age of supercomputers and advanced materials, running a centuries-long lap only to arrive back at the starting line? The ancient master builder intuitively understood that fighting the Earth's energy was futile, that the path to survival lay in acceptance and guided release. We spent generations building rigid fortresses against that truth, only to now spend vast resources installing systems that allow our buildings to yield, to dance, to dissipate, just as the ancient temples always have. Our genius has been in quantification and scale, in making these principles work for a 101-story tower, but the underlying philosophy is a rediscovery. This is not a dismissal of modern engineering. It is a revelation of its deepest lineage. It suggests that the future of resilient design may not lie in ever more complex contraptions, but in a deeper synthesis where we marry our computational power with the timeless, elegant logic of the past. If our present is learning to move like the past, what might that combined wisdom build for our future? The blueprint for the next great city might be hidden inside a termite mound or etched in the bones of a bird. As we stand at the convergence of rediscovered ancient wisdom and explosive new technology, a radical design philosophy is emerging, one that looks not to conquer nature, but to learn from its deepest engineering secrets. This is the future of biomimicry, where the principles of life itself guide our structures, and where the lessons of the megaliths find new expression in algorithms and advanced materials. Innovators like architect Michael Pollan champion this view, arguing that the answers to our greatest challenges, from sustainability to seismic resilience, are all around us, perfected by billions of years of evolution and thousands of years of human trial. This is not about nostalgia, but about a profound synthesis. It is archaeo-engineering meeting artificial intelligence. Consider the concept of redundancy, a hallmark of ancient stone webs and composite timber frames. In the human body, our bones are not solid, dense rods. Inside, they are structured with a delicate, porous lattice called trabeculae. This lattice is a masterpiece of efficient design, placing material exactly where stress lines flow, creating immense strength with minimal weight and built-in backups. Now, imagine a building's structural frame not as uniform steel I-beams, but as a three-dimensional printed lattice, custom calculated by an AI to channel forces along the most efficient paths, with multiple load-bearing routes so that if one tiny strut fails, the entire network holds. This is mass customization at a molecular scale, the same principle that guided an Inca mason to shape a unique stone for a unique gap, but now executed by robots that can create forms of impossible complexity. Or look to the flexible joint, the secret of dry stone walls and wooden pagodas. In nature, a tree branch withstands hurricane force winds not by being rigid, but by swaying, its fibers and connection to the trunk allowing a graceful, energy-absorbing dance. Researchers are now developing new composite materials and connection systems that mimic this ductility, creating building components that can flex and return to shape, that have a kind of structural memory. The goal is a skyscraper that sways like a reed in the wind, its very skin and skeleton designed to oscillate and dissipate energy harmlessly. The most tangible leap may be in the materials themselves, returning us directly to ancient Roman insight. Scientists around the world are now developing self-healing concrete. By embedding special limestone producing bacteria into the concrete mix, when a tiny crack forms and water seeps in, the bacteria activate, consuming nutrients and excreting calcite, essentially growing new limestone to seal the fracture. This is a direct, intentional mimicry of the reactive volcanic ash in Roman concrete that allowed it to regenerate over centuries. We are teaching our buildings to heal their own wounds, just as the ancients did. This research extends to three-dimensional printing entire structures with graded materials, where the composition changes from one area to another, dense and strong in compression zones, lighter and more flexible in areas that need to give. You could print a wall with intentional, strategic voids inside it, channels that mimic the hollow, shock-absorbing structure of bird bones or coral, creating pathways for seismic energy to dissipate without causing damage. This leads to a compelling, forward-looking question. Can we forge a new architectural language that is both hyper-modern in its means and deeply ancient in its wisdom? A language where buildings are grown more than built, where they are tailored to their specific place and threat, and where they carry within them the innate resilience of natural systems and the time-tested logic of the megaliths. To answer that, we must first ensure the original textbooks, the ancient sites themselves, are still there to read. The stones that withstood the wrath of the earth for thousands of years now face a quiet, insidious tremor of our own making. We have become, perhaps unintentionally, the new seismic threat to these ancient survivors. The very ground they were so carefully partnered with is being altered from beneath them by a host of modern pressures, creating a paradox where the monuments survive the natural disaster only to be undermined by daily human activity. One of the most pervasive dangers is the massive extraction of groundwater for burgeoning cities and agriculture. When water is pumped from the porous layers of soil and rock beneath a city, those layers can compact like a sponge, slowly drying out and shrinking. This leads to ground subsidence, a gradual, uneven sinking of the Earth's surface. The effect is catastrophic for foundations that have been stable for millennia. UNESCO conservationists monitoring World Heritage Sites have raised urgent alarms about this very issue. The historic center of Mexico City, built upon the soft sediments of a drained ancient lake, is sinking at an alarming rate, some areas by as much as a foot per year. This relentless subsidence puts immense, uneven stress on colonial churches and pre-Hispanic ruins alike, twisting foundations and creating cracks that a future earthquake could exploit with terrifying efficiency. It is a slow-motion collapse driven not by the Earth's fury but by our thirst. The threat extends far beyond water. Intensive mining, whether for minerals deep below or for quarries that alter the landscape, can destabilize entire geological regions. Blasting from nearby construction or mining creates shockwaves that travel through the bedrock, potentially creating a network of microfractures in stones that have stood solid for ages. These tiny, invisible flaws become weak points, compromising the monolithic integrity that was the structure's primary defense. Furthermore, the constant vibration from dense urban traffic, from subways and heavy machinery, acts like a never-ending, low-grade earthquake. This perpetual shaking can fatigue ancient materials, gradually working stones loose from their careful fittings and accelerating wear on already delicate joints. Air pollution introduces another silent attacker. Acid rain and industrial particulates settle on ancient surfaces, chemically reacting with limestone, marble, and even ancient mortars. This modern pollution degrades stone far faster than centuries of natural wind and rain ever could, eating away at the very fabric of the monuments and weakening them from the outside in. Perhaps most unsettling is the phenomenon of human-induced seismicity. The construction of massive reservoirs for dams can trigger earthquakes by the sheer weight of the water-altering pressures along fault lines. Similarly, the high-pressure injection of wastewater from activities like fracking can lubricate deep faults, allowing them to slip. This means we are not only weakening the structures, but in some cases, we may also be increasing the frequency or intensity of the seismic events that test them. Climate change adds another layer of instability, with more extreme weather patterns leading to heavier, more erosive rainfall that can flood and undermine foundations, or prolonged droughts that further deplete stabilizing groundwater. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is a famous case of ancient subsidence, but modern efforts to stabilize it are a constant battle against the very water table that its medieval builders could never have predicted would be so manipulated. The Temple of the Sun at Konark, a masterpiece of stone already battling coastal erosion, now also contends with these new anthropogenic pressures. This presents a profound and sobering responsibility. We are the first generation that must protect these sentinels not just from nature, but from the unintended consequences of our own civilization's footprint. Their survival is no longer just a matter of passive endurance. It requires active, global stewardship. It demands that urban planning, water management, and industrial policy consider the silent stability of our shared heritage. The question is no longer just how they survived the past, but whether our present will allow them to endure into the future. This global effort to preserve them is, in a way, the final test of the ancient wisdom they embody, a test of whether we can learn to build and live in a way that honors rather than undermines the deep stability of the earth. A delicate dance now unfolds between curiosity and care. We stand before these ancient sentinels with a powerful hunger to understand their secrets, yet our very touch, our probing instruments, could become the tremor that finally brings them down. This is the central dilemma of modern preservation. How do we learn from the past without becoming the agents of its destruction? The answer lies in a quiet revolution of seeing, a suite of technologies that allow us to look without touching, to listen without breaking. This is the world of non-destructive testing, where science becomes a form of respectful archaeology. Ground-penetrating radar, for instance, sends harmless radio waves into the earth, painting a picture of hidden foundations, buried chambers, and voids without ever lifting a shovel. It reveals the subterranean anatomy of a site, showing us how the builders prepared the ground where they laid their first stones and how water was managed deep below the surface. Another transformative tool is LiDAR, light detection and ranging. Mounted on aircraft or drones, it fires millions of laser pulses at a landscape, piercing the dense canopy of a jungle or mapping every contour of a ruin to create a breathtakingly precise three-dimensional model. At Angkor Wat, LiDAR surveys revealed an entire hidden urban landscape surrounding the temple, a vast network of canals, roads, and smaller structures swallowed by the forest. This discovery rewrote the history of the Khmer Empire, all achieved without clearing a single vine or disturbing an artifact. It allowed researchers to see the city's brilliant water management system, a key to its survival from the air. Then there is acoustic tomography, a method that listens to the health of stone. By sending sound waves through a massive block or a wall and measuring how they travel, conservators can map internal cracks, voids, or areas of weakness, like a doctor performing an ultrasound on ancient masonry. These technologies are guided by a principle borrowed from medicine: first, do no harm. As Dr. Erica Avrami, a leading conservation scientist, emphasizes, our primary role is stewardship. The monument's integrity comes first, our questions come second. This ethical framework extends to sampling. When physical material is absolutely necessary, scientists now use micro-sampling techniques, extracting a tiny core of material, sometimes just the size of a grain of rice, for analysis. This minimizes impact while still revealing the chemical signature of ancient mortars or the source of quarry stones. The ultimate expression of this non-invasive approach is the creation of a digital twin. Using data from laser scanners and photogrammetry, engineers can build a perfect, atomically precise virtual replica of a structure. This digital twin becomes an immortal laboratory. Researchers can run endless simulations on it, subjecting it to virtual earthquakes of varying magnitudes, testing theories of load distribution, or modeling the effects of climate change and groundwater extraction over centuries. We can stress it to its breaking point in a computer to understand its real-world limits, all while the physical monument rests undisturbed. This work is inherently collaborative. International teams of archaeologists, engineers, geologists, and data scientists now share findings across open access platforms, building a global knowledge base about ancient resilience. The detailed scan of a temple in Peru can inform the restoration of a pagoda in Japan, creating a cross-cultural dialogue of durability. This raises a pivotal question for our time. How do we balance our insatiable thirst for knowledge with our profound duty as guardians of human heritage? The technology gives us a way, but the wisdom to use it sparingly, respectfully, must come from us. It requires acknowledging that some mysteries may be meant to stay embedded in the stone, that preservation is sometimes about protecting the question as much as finding the answer. This careful stewardship is not an end point, but a vital link in the chain of human adaptation, ensuring the textbook of the past remains legible for the engineers of the future. That quiet duty of preservation leads us to a final, deeper truth. These structures are far more than feats of engineering. They are mirrors held up to humanity itself. In their silent, enduring presence, they tell a story not of stone but of spirit, a narrative about our deepest ambitions and our most profound relationship with a powerful, living planet. To build something meant to last for millennia is an act of breathtaking faith. It is a declaration that the future matters, that the values and identity of a people are worth etching into the very bones of the earth. The Victorian thinker John Ruskin called this the lamp of memory in architecture. He argued that the greatest buildings are those that connect us across time, that carry forward the labor, the hope, and the vision of those who came before. A pyramid, a stone circle, a temple carved from a cliff, these are not just shelters or shrines, they are lamps. They hold a flame of cultural memory and project it forward through centuries of darkness, through the fall of empires and the rise of new ones, ensuring that a people's story is never fully extinguished. This required a kind of social alchemy as remarkable as the stonework itself. To move a mountain one stone at a time demands more than strong backs. It requires a symphony of cooperation on a scale we can scarcely comprehend. It demands a shared purpose so powerful it can coordinate the labor of thousands, manage supply chains for food, water, and tools across vast distances, and sustain that effort across generations. The project manager of the Great Pyramid was not just an engineer, but a master of logistics, psychology, and civic unity. These endeavors were the ancient world's equivalent of a moonshot, forging skills in organization, communication, and collective sacrifice that were as vital to survival as any agricultural technique. The choice of material itself is a profound statement of values. In a world of wood, mud, and thatch, to commit to stone is to choose the permanent over the perishable, the eternal over the ephemeral. It says we are not just passing through. Our ideas, our gods, our understanding of the cosmos, these are not fleeting thoughts. They are as solid and real as this granite, and we will anchor them here for all time. This impulse appears across the globe, a shared human signature written in monoliths. From the haunting rings of Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain to the mysterious, animal-carved pillars of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which predates Stonehenge by over 6,000 years, we see cultures with no possible contact independently arriving at the same monumental conclusion. They all felt the need to gather, to haul impossible weights, and to raise something colossal and enduring into the sky. It speaks to a universal human urge to make a mark, to create a fixed point in a changing world, to dialogue with eternity. This global phenomenon forces a quiet, personal reflection upon our own age. We live in an era of incredible digital creation, but so much of what we build is intangible, stored in clouds and on servers, vulnerable to bit rot and obsolescence. Our social structures can feel transient, our political cycles short. So we must ask, what are we building today in physical form that will honestly speak of our values to humans 5,000 years from now? What lamp of memory are we lighting? The ancient stones offer no easy answers, but they stand as a silent challenge, a reminder that our relationship with time, with community, and with the earth itself is the ultimate foundation of anything meant to last. A single strand of silk is fragile, but woven together they can stop a blade. This is the ultimate lesson of the ancient builders, a truth far greater than the sum of its parts. We have explored dry stone joints, massive foundations, and celestial alignments as individual concepts, but their genius was never in isolation. It was in the web, the intricate, interdependent system where each principle strengthened the others to create something unbreakable. Ancient seismic resilience was a holistic philosophy, a resilient ecosystem of ideas built into stone. Think of it as a chain of defense where every link is vital. It begins deep underground with intelligent site selection, the choice of a stable bedrock platform. This solid foundation allows for the placement of overwhelming mass, the inertia of giant stones. That mass is then shaped by intelligent geometry, carved into forms with low centers of gravity and wide bases that refuse to topple, but mass alone can be brittle. So the builders introduced flexibility through their materials and methods. the dry stone joints that can grind and shift, the wooden frameworks that can bend. This controlled movement dissipates the seismic energy that the foundation and mass cannot simply absorb. And enveloping it all is the long timeline, the cultural memory that selected these sites, refined these techniques, and had the patience to let structures settle into the land over generations. Each element covers for the others. The flexibility prevents the mass from cracking. The mass gives the flexibility something substantial to protect. The foundation ensures the whole system has a stable stage upon which to perform its dance. You can see this synergistic web in surviving stretches of the Great Wall of China, snaking across some of the most seismically active terrain on Earth. Where it stands today, it is not because of one trick. Its foundation was often cut directly into the living rock of mountain ridges, a symbiotic bond with the most stable geology. Its base is massively wide, tapering upward in a stable trapezoidal shape. The masonry itself, in the oldest sections, uses precisely fitted bricks and stones, often with a flexible rice mortar, allowing for minute adjustments. It was a multi-layered defense system. When tremors rattled the mountains, the solid foundation anchored the wall. Its geometry channeled forces downward, and the flexible joints absorbed the shock across thousands of individual blocks. The sections that failed were often those where later repairs compromised one part of this chain, using rigid mortar on unstable ground, breaking the synergistic web. This synthesis reveals that for the ancients, resilience was not a checkbox or a technical standard to meet. It was a worldview. It was an understanding that to build for permanence, you had to engage with every facet of the world, the solidity of its rock, the flow of its water, the patterns of its sky, and the patience of its time. They did not see engineering, geology, and culture as separate fields. They were threads in the same tapestry. The dry stone wall was an expression of cultural patience. The celestial alignment was a guide to terrestrial stability. This interconnected thinking created structures that were not just objects in the landscape, but active participants in it, capable of a dynamic, enduring conversation with the very forces that sought to destroy them. They built ecosystems of stone, and in doing so, they left behind a question far more challenging than any engineering puzzle. The final lesson from these silent teachers is both a humbling reminder and a call to action. We began with a city in ruins beside an unshaken temple, a stark image of the seismic paradox. Our journey has taken us from the intuitive physics of dry stone walls to the celestial alignments that guided ancient builders to stable ground. We have seen that these structures are not primitive relics, but sophisticated textbooks carved from the living earth. Their endurance was never a single trick, but a masterful synthesis, a resilient ecosystem of ideas woven into form. It was the synergy of massive inertia and flexible joints, of deep foundations and patient timelines, of celestial observation and terrestrial wisdom. They teach us that true resilience is not about perfect rigidity, not about standing defiant and still against the storm. It is about intelligent adaptation. It is about designing systems, whether of stone or steel, that can receive the immense energy of a changing world, move with it in a controlled dance, and dissipate its destructive potential harmlessly. This is the profound shift in thinking they offer us, a shift from resistance to harmony. We carry this wisdom forward not to copy the past, but to inform a better future. It asks us to build with a deeper dialogue, to consider not just the cost and the code, but the character of the ground, the memory of the place, and the legacy we wish to leave. Can we create spaces that are not only safe and sustainable, but also possess that timeless quality, that silent dignity that speaks across millennia? The choice is ours. Which of these ancient principles resonates most deeply with you? Is it the elegant flexibility of the dry stone joint, the profound stability of chosen ground, or the patient wisdom of building across generations? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this exploration of forgotten engineering fascinating, please subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of our world. Remember, sometimes the oldest stones we walk among hold the very newest lessons for how to live and build upon this earth.